Well, I'll tell you this. I just wish Iowa had tried to go 2-for-1 at the end of the first half. I'm just so disappointed in the complacency on offense from this team. I'm kidding, of course. What a win! What a game! This is a game we expected Iowa to win. It's a game Iowa needed to win, in my opinion, to ensure not being on the 7 line. Now they may end up on the 7 line. We can talk about that. But what a performance! Iowa 112-70. Is that right? 112-76. That's not the final score, is it? Oh, it is. I thought my eyes were deceiving me. 112-76. Iowa breaks the Big Ten single game scoring record. All right. And that's certainly not the only record they have broke. And we're going to be joined here momentarily by Coach Gary Close to talk it all out. I mean, this is just I didn't expect this, didn't see this coming, but regardless, what a win. What a performance. Now, the good news is they were able to get their starters. I think Fran was I think Fran played the second half perfectly. I was wondering how long Fran would wait to take Keegan Murray out of the game, and he waited, I believe, a possession or two after the under 16 in the second half. So after the under 16 timeout in that second half, I think Keegan hit a 3, and it might have been the next time down he went out, the next dead ball. And so that's just smart coaching by Fran McCaffery. At times I've thought Fran has waited a bit too long to make that move. He did it plenty early today, and very smart, because you got a game tomorrow. You don't want to risk injury. Of course, Patrick McCaffery, we were told through the BTN crew that he had been dealing with some fatigue due to an illness/hip injury. So it's good to get him out of there. I mean, this game could not have went any better, folks. There was not a way for this game to go any better. Now, Fran might say that last 3 by Luke Lakita probably shouldn't have happened. I'm surprised Luke took that, because Fran is pretty set in stone about how he feels about those late, I don't want to call them antics, but those late threes, those late shots. Kind of happy for Luke. And I doubt Fran's going to be too hard on him. But again, just an unbelievable game. And we will be joined by Coach Gary Close here momentarily. We'll open up the call line for you to call in, give your thoughts and comments, possibly previewing a huge game tomorrow. Boy, you win tomorrow, the first time Iowa would win 2 games in the Big Ten tournament since 2006. Think about that. I mean, think about that. That's incredible. And they've got a chance to get it done. Good to see you here, Skylar. Brandon is here as well. The real Hayden says it almost feels like we should save some of those threes for tomorrow. I know people were saying that during the game today. Ari Gold says, go Hawks. Remember, Iowa did shoot the 3 ball well basically the last month of the season. And I have to go back and look at the numbers, but I mean, they've been shooting the 3 ball well. So I guess my thinking on this is, just because they made 19 today does not mean they're going to be that they ran the tank dry. I would see no reason that they're not going to shoot well tomorrow, other than the fact that Rutgers is an exceptional defensive team. We know Iowa's, I think, 45, 46 points in Piscataway. Think about that. Iowa just scored 112 points on a neutral court against a Big Ten team. And when their next opponent, Rutgers, the last time they played Rutgers, just a month and a half ago, Iowa failed to break 50 in that game. So let that sink in for a second. But boy, you have to like how Iowa's playing right now. And yes, being able to get those starters on the bench soon, that's what you hope for. Username invalid is here as well. Thank you, sir, or ma'am, whatever the case may be. Joe says, great defense, most improved. Worried for a second, Northwestern strategy was able to get us into foul trouble, which is one way to weaken the Hawks. And Joe, I brought that up early. You had 3 early fouls on Joe Toussaint and Aaron Eulis combined, which concerned me a bit. But Iowa never really seemed in jeopardy of even early of allowing Northwestern back into the game. I mean, there was a time where Iowa was trading buckets with Northwestern, and that made me a bit nervous. And, you don't want complacency on that end, but you did hear Rick Pizzo, and I'm going to bring this up to Coach Close. You did hear Rick Pizzo bring up the fact that I believe it was the under, I don't know that it was so late as the under 8 timeout in the first half, but during one of the media timeouts, Fran McCaffery reportedly ripped into his team for their defense and for complacency and for their slow rotations. And boy, they came out, looked like a totally different defensive team because the defense wasn't good early. I mean, Northwestern was shooting 67% through at least half of the first half. Those aren't good numbers. But Iowa completely flipped the script. And Northwestern was shooting 67%, and I think Iowa was up by like 18-20. So when you're playing offensively the way Iowa played tonight, you're not losing anybody. The difference is you're going to go up against an opponent, specifically tomorrow, that is a much better defensive team than Northwestern. Let's add Coach Gary Close to the mix. Gary.
Wow. How about that?
How about that? Let's just kind of hash what I just got done bathing in, and that is the unbelievable performance of Iowa offensively. 112 points, breaking the Big Ten tournament single game scoring record, blowing that record out of the water, Gary, which I think it was 96, I believe was the record, 97.
Yeah, you're right.
So, first of all, Northwestern is a much healthier team than they were when they visited Iowa City. We know they were dealing with the flu when they got blown out a couple weeks ago. So it begs the question, how does Northwestern match up this badly against Iowa, first of all?
That's a real good question, Corey. I think Iowa got them down early, deep, and I think they just saw the end of the year coming pretty fast and just didn't have a response to it at all. And they were just too good, and they're then making every shot possible. And I think they just decided this is the time to end this year and move on. They didn't look like they wanted to be around after about 10 minutes.
And that surprised me, Gary, because that was a spirited comeback against Nebraska yesterday. I mean,
yeah,
what were your thoughts on the Wildcats' performance yesterday?
Yeah, they did a nice job. They could have, Nebraska led most of that game and coming off of 2 big wins. So that was a nice win for Northwestern. But it's a notch or two up from Nebraska to Iowa, especially the way they're playing. And they just didn't have an answer, especially on the defensive end. They just couldn't stop them.
Absolutely right.
It gets discouraging. You see a team score literally every time down the court, and a lot of them are from 3. It's discouraging, and every time they made even kind of a slight run at them, it was quickly smashed down and widened again. So, real impressive performance.
Do I have this stat correct, Mark? What did I just call you, Mark? Gary, that they broke the single game Big Ten record. And we're not just talking about the tournament. This is the single game Big Ten record for a conference game, correct?
I don't know, but I can certainly believe it. I can't believe anybody had more than 19. That's an ungodly number. That's 57 points on 29 possessions. That's almost 2 points per possession. It's about perfect. So really moved the ball well, and it got contagious. It was fun to watch.
Half of Iowa's points came from, or about half of Iowa's points came from the 3-point arc. Ari Gold is here, says Final Four, here we come. First, let's jump to those conclusions. I have no problem with the happiness, though. Lemansky says downtown Freddie Brown and John Johnson, Old Hawks and Seattle Sonics would be so proud. Thomas says that was a decent showing. 14 players all scored. Was Fran McCaffrey upset with that last 3 from Luke Lakita?
I believe so.
I want to get your thoughts on that, Gary, because I know how Fran operates in those situations, and I think it's because he really values sportsmanship, and I understand that. But do you almost let Luke have his moment there? How do you view the situation?
Well, I'd kind of like to see him play the possession out right from the beginning, but it was obvious they weren't. And that's what he wanted. And hey, he's the coach, and I understand it. You're up big, and what's one more possession? And so when he did it, I could see why he was upset, because that's not what he wanted. And you bank it in. I mean, they're embarrassed. Northwestern's embarrassed. It's on TV, national TV, and he just doesn't want to show them up even more. He probably appreciates Chris Collins and what he's trying to do, and it just there was nothing to gain from that. So I can see why he was upset.
Chris Collins seems like and it's always easy to say this. I get it when you're beating a person, But Chris Collins seems like a really upstanding guy. I mean, I think, do you know Chris personally, Gary? I know there's a connection with Kenyon.
Yeah. We actually recruited Chris to Iowa and came very, very close to getting him. He made an official visit. Chris Street was his host. He left thinking he might be a Hawkeye and goes to class on Monday, and Mike Krzyzewski's sitting in his homeroom seat. And so the tide quickly turned. And but he always had a real high opinion of Iowa. And I don't know where Fran was at the time. Maybe he was even at Notre Dame at the time. Maybe they even recruited him, but I don't know. It's a while back. But we recruited him hard. I thought we had a chance. So he's a terrific kid. And that's a tough job. And hopefully he can get it turned around.
Yeah, and for some reason I was thinking it was Kenyon. You told me Chris Street and his recruiting pitch to Chris Collins. This game tomorrow at Rutgers, and we can talk about that here in a little bit, Gary, but is this almost a total 180 as far as playing style? I mean, Northwestern they don't want to play real fast, right? I mean, Rutgers doesn't want to play real fast, but defensively, you couldn't have two polar opposite teams, it appears on paper, right? I mean, Iowa scored, I think, 46 against Rutgers the first time out. Yeah. How do you not get ahead of yourselves and get a big hit after a win like this with a quick turnaround tomorrow?
Well, you got to. I mean, that's the nature of tournaments, especially the Big Ten, where there is not even a 1 day break. They played Rutgers. They know it's a much better team. It's a much more physical team. I think the big thing is it's like you said, it's going to be harder to score. Whereas today it was just there was no resistance at all, wide open shots and everywhere on the court, and that's not going to be the case probably tomorrow. So. Well, I think what's good is they didn't have to spend a whole lot of energy in terms of a lot of minutes played. It was probably like a light practice the day before game. And so that helps, especially if they continue to keep winning and the games pile up. So I don't think it could have gone any better. And they know, Rutgers had them. Rutgers is the 4 seed and has beaten them. And so it's going to be a heck of a game to watch.
Yeah, let's remember, you alluded to it, Gary, why Iowa did not get the double bye. And you can pinpoint it to that one game, a loss at Piscataway.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Absolutely should have more than Iowa's full attention. Let's take our first call here. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Hey, Corey, how you doing? It's the real MVP.
I'm good. What do you think about that performance, the real MVP?
It was the best performance I've seen today in all of basketball.
Well, you could argue it was the best performance in the history of the Big Ten tournament. So, that doesn't surprise me.
I mean, there was never a point Northwestern, it felt like, had a chance in this game. The main thing I'm worried about, if you're an Iowa fan, is like an overconfidence, maybe an arrogance going into this next game. Any worries about that?
Not from me, Gary. I don't think so. No, Rutgers has already beaten them once. I think they played with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder today. I think Kenyon probably was disappointed, or Keegan, he was disappointed to get Big Ten Player of the Year, and they had a tough loss at Illinois that would have given them the 4 seed. So I don't think so. I think they have a good respect for Rutgers, and they better because Rutgers has had a great stretch here, finishing the year up, and they're rested and ready to go. So I don't think so. I think they'll be ready. I think they're on a mission. I think they have a feeling that they can win this thing, and as anybody can. So I don't think so. I think they'll be ready to go.
Coach, have you ever had a game where it just felt like everything was going in?
You know what? Very few. Certainly nothing like that. That was unbelievable. We had a few games like that, but you tend to remember the losses a little longer than you do the wins, especially games like that. But it was, to have played Sunday, so they hadn't played in 4 days, to be that sharp was really impressive.
And what did you think about how the coach did with the starters versus the substitute, for having the starters play like the first 4 minutes of the second half and then not touching the court again?
Yeah, I think that was probably the smart way to go. They had gotten they got their 20, 25 minutes. And I think the other thing you want to do is you want to get your players out before things get sloppy. They had played so well. Let's leave it at that. And sometimes in games like that, things can get kind of out of hand and you lose your discipline. And so you like to get them out before that happens. Not that it would, but there's a chance. And the game was over. So good time to let the other guys play and end on a good note, knowing that you played real well.
Okay, Corey, this question is for you. You're usually the cynical one on here, so you got anything cynical you want to say?
I'm so glad that I've got a reputation now. Well, let's see. The only thing cynical that I could point out was I didn't think Iowa's defense was good for the first 10 minutes, Gary. But I give Fran a lot of credit. You heard Rick Pizzo report, was it the under 8 timeout, that Fran really let his kids have it. I'm not saying he was really ripping into them, but from the sounds of it, he was not happy with the rotations, and you could tell a considerable difference. They were crisp defensively after that. Am I right, Gary?
Yeah, I would think so. I think, sometimes when points come easy, you kind of lose your concentration on the defensive end. And I think they did. There was a stretch there for about 10 minutes in the middle of the half where they're kind of trading baskets, and it didn't really matter because most cases it was Iowa trade to 3 for 2. And so the lead was still widening up, even though they weren't playing particularly sharp. And then, like you said, about the last 8 minutes or so, they played pretty well and then widened the lead even further. So, but all in all, really, really, really good performance. I think it's hard to find much to complain about.
Agreed.
Corey, I know Coach Coase has said Iowa's going to win the Big Ten tournament. Do you have any predictions?
Did you not watch my podcast yesterday, Real MVP?
Is it on Spotify?
Of course. What are you doing?
Okay.
You're usually the first to everything. What's going on?
I don't have Spotify. Okay.
No, it's on. What do you mean it's on Spotify? It's on YouTube. It's right here. It's
on YouTube. Really?
Yeah, I posted it last night.
I didn't get a notification.
Okay, well, you better check your phone. Better call your provider. No, it's on there.
I will.
I'm not going to give away my prediction right now, but you go back there. I fill out my entire Big Ten tournament bracket on there.
Okay. Well, sometimes YouTube does that thing where they don't give out notifications.
I know.
So maybe that happened.
I didn't get a heads up. We had a little show where you did the bracket.
I just did. Yeah, I just predicted that. I was less cynical than you'd expect, Gary.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I'll make my prediction. A team that starts with the letter I will win the tournament.
I do not have Iowa winning the tournament.
I said a team with the letter I. I wanted Illinois in there.
I do not have a team with the letter I winning the tournament. That's all I'm going to say. But I'll say this: I have Iowa going very far in the tournament. I think Iowa's primed for a run, but I'd love to see them win it. And if they can get to the finals, as I said on the show last night, I think all bets are off. As far as they're coming off a win against Rutgers and a win against Illinois. Is anybody going to doubt them against Purdue? I don't think they match up very well with Purdue if it's Purdue. Yeah, I certainly think that right now Iowa's playing better than anybody in the Big Ten. I know Vegas sportsbooks, they were all high on Iowa. I think Purdue and Iowa, last I saw, were the two favorites to win the tournament, which I found interesting because Illinois is actually playing better than Purdue, in my opinion, right now. But
right.
No, I agree with you. I think that Iowa has an opportunity. Tomorrow is going to be a big challenge. I'm nervous about tomorrow. There's no reason to take Rutgers lightly. And by some pundits, they're still on the bubble, Gary. That's the other thing that we have to realize is there may be a little bit of sense of desperation I think they're in right now, even if they lose. But boy, it would help them if they could win tomorrow to seal the deal on that.
No doubt, but I think they're in. I'd be shocked if they didn't get in. They finished fourth in the league. There's nobody. I bet there's nobody in the history of the Big Ten that finished fourth that didn't get in the NCAA tournament ever.
Right.
I think the only team that needs to sweat right now is Michigan.
I think they're out.
No, I think, and I could be wrong. Just going from my conversation with Tim Kruger of Stadium the other day, I think they're all in right now. I think Indiana and Michigan are very, very similar place right now. Now you may be right. Maybe Michigan does miss out, Gary. But I don't know how much that loss to Indiana hurts them. Indiana before, according to, I think, DeCourcy, he had Indiana last 4 in. I know Tim Kruger did not have them in his bracket. I would guess they're both going to be sweating unless Indiana can win tomorrow. I think if Indiana wins tomorrow, Gary, they're in.
Yeah, probably. I think, and it'll depend upon how the rest of the league tournaments go. If there's some upsets, they're really going to be sweating.
Right.
The only thing I'll say about the Michigan-Indiana game is the frustration Michigan fans and Michigan staff must feel is that had the dominant lead to blow it to Indiana of all teams. A team that hasn't been able to win a game to save their life somehow pulled a comeback like that out. It's unexplainable.
You got to give a lot of credit to Mike Woodson. I think, he certainly, you'd think that their spirits would be in the dumps at halftime, and they came roaring back. It was a fun performance. I'm happy for Indiana. I don't like Michigan. I'm happy for Indiana, and I'm happy for Mike Woodson and Trace Jackson Davis and all those guys that have really persevered. Rob Fennessy, that he's been there forever, and they've just had a hard time finding success. So hopefully they can get to the tournament. As an Iowa fan, you absolutely should be rooting for Michigan, Indiana, Rutgers to all get in the tournament. It helps the Big Ten if you get 9 in. It'd be great.
Definitely.
Well, that's all I got for you tonight, Corey.
All right, sir.
Thanks
Appreciate the call.
Thanks for your call.
Have a great night. And those are all good points. Can Indiana beat Illinois tomorrow, Gary? What do you think?
I don't think they will, but they could. Yeah. I always thought the team that has played one game has a little bit of an advantage going into the next one. So I think they've got a shot. Illinois at times is I don't know how important it's going to be for Illinois to win this tournament. They won the league. They're in. They're going to get a high seed. So it could happen, but I don't think it will.
Lemansky says, Gary, who are the 2 or 3 greatest scorers that you ever coached?
Wow, that's a good question. 2 or 3 greatest scorers. Well, Roy Marble was a terrific scorer. He's the all-time leading scorer in the history of Iowa basketball, and I also coached the all-time leading scorer in Wisconsin basketball, Orlando Tucker, who was a warrior. So those 2 probably would be right up there. And if I had to make a third one, I probably would. That's a good question. Probably nobody really jumps out. Frank Kaminski had an unbelievable final 2 years with us. He was player of the year, kind of like what Luka did last year. And he's translated that into a pretty strong NBA season. Sam Decker got hot during then. The other one I might mention would be Devin Harris. He played, I only got to coach him 1 year, first year, and he was a terrific player, and he could really score. So probably, what did I say, 5? So there you go. But Roy and Orlando, two guys that led both schools, their all-time leading scorers I had the privilege to coach, so that's fun.
This isn't going along the lines of best scorers that you've coached, but who's the lefty point guard for Wisconsin that probably in your last couple of years there that you coached that played with Frank and
Trayvon Jackson. Yeah. Jimmy Jackson's son. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Jackson's son. I forget that. So what was he like? He was always you guys were always a thorn in Iowa's side, but what was it like to coach him?
He was a real good player. Yeah. He lived in the shadow of his dad, which was not easy. His dad was a really good player. We actually lost him. We were ranked number 1 in the country and lost at Rutgers when Frank had a concussion the game before and didn't play. And Trayvon got hurt at right before half, and he did not play the rest of the year and came back for the NCAA tournament, which hurt us in some respects. But he did get back in time for the tournament in the Final Four run. Real good team player, great defender, made big shots, real good player.
So Josh Malice is going to give us an opinion. He says, Fran's screaming at Lukita, a kid who plays about as much as I do, for taking his chance at a prayer 3 is simply a bad look. I understand where Josh is coming from with this. I can see it both ways, Gary. I really can. I don't know that I didn't see it, I guess. I didn't know that Fran screamed at Lakita. He was not happy with the final play, but Luke was smiling in the handshake line. So I can see it both ways, but I think if you want to look at it from a positive standpoint, Fran is a man of high character. Whether you say he maybe gets after his guys too much, he's a guy of high character, and he cares. Like you said, you're up by 40 and yet he's still concerned with Northwestern and Chris Collins. I mean, I think he has the respect of a lot of these head coaches in this conference.
Yeah, and I think he's coaching he's coaching guys all the way to the last guy that plays, just like he would if he were the first guy playing and he didn't like it. It's too bad he got caught on camera, but it's like I said before, I'd kind of like to see the possession just played out. I don't think one more makes a whole lot of difference because those guys don't get a chance to play a lot. But he made the decision to hold it out. And I think it was because they'd embarrassed him so bad. It could cost him his job. I mean, that was such a bad performance that it makes you worry for the guy. And I think Fran probably felt that way.
Yeah, it's a good point, and it's brought up by Doug here. He says, let me bring up the question for you. I think it was from Doug. Here it is. Chris Collins on the hot seat. Is he on the hot seat right now, Gary?
I have no idea. But I know losses like that do not help. It didn't look good. I hope not, because I think he's a good coach for that. That's a tough program. I think he's a good fit there. But I'll put it this way: I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be surprised, but I wouldn't be shocked.
And that really would be too bad. I think that's a hard job to win at. And that's Pat Fitzgerald, what he's done at Northwestern football over the years is so impressive. And that's why the Bears wanted to hire him. And frankly, I'm not a huge Pat Fitzgerald fan, but you got to respect the heck out of what he's done. And Chris Collins, I'm thinking back, was it a year ago? Was it last year that Northwestern was actually in the top 25 briefly? And it felt like they were close this year for a time, Gary. They were playing everybody close, and they just can't get, almost like Indiana in a way, they just can't get over the hump.
Yeah, it's hard in this league. And then those losses pile up, and it just gets harder and harder and more frustrating. And it's a tough deal. He had that great run that got him into the tournament, several years ago, and you thought maybe it turned the corner, but this league's a bear. You're gonna have a good team and be way down in the standings and getting some losses just because the competition is so tough.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and do what everybody likes to do on the show, Gary, and that's pit you, Wisconsin versus Iowa. I'm gonna put you on the spot here again. Kelly says Keegan showed everyone why he should have won Player of the Year. Now Johnny Davis wins it. Here's what's weird about I don't know if you looked into it deep enough, Gary, but Johnny Davis wins Big Ten Player of the Year. Both, obviously, I think it's both coaches and the media voted him Big Ten Player of the Year. Excuse me. What's weird though is he was not a unanimous first team selection. Explain that to me. How could, and it was the media. I mean, how can you possibly? And I'm talking about the media, not the coaches. He was unanimous, I believe, with coaches. How can you possibly not be unanimous? Johnny Davis as a first team.
Somebody probably doesn't like Wisconsin. I don't know. That'd be the
That's
only.
why it shouldn't be the media. Yeah. The media should not be voting on these things.
It was, I don't know how it could either. There were you look at the Big Ten second team, and it's loaded. It was, you could have made a strong case for Keegan. You could have made a strong case from the kid from Purdue. You could have made a strong case for even several others. Coburn. Usually what happens is the guy that plays on the team that won the league is going to get a little bit of an edge. And I think that's the reason why he got it, in addition to playing really well against games they had to have. He played unbelievably against Purdue. He played unbelievably against Indiana when they were going to lose. And those games, if they did, they wouldn't have won the championship. So I said a little while ago, Keegan could not win the Big Ten Player and win the national player there. It wouldn't surprise me, because that's more of a national deal. And I don't think winning the league as a national player of the year is as important as it is within the league. So I think he's got a shot. I think he's got as good a shot as anybody. It'll be interesting to see.
So who would have been I'm going to put you on the spot again. Who would have been your Big Ten Player of the Year?
That is a really tough call. I'm a little more partial to Keegan, just I've gotten to know him a little bit and I've watched him a lot this year, whereas I have not watched Johnny Davis nearly as much. But I think if it was really tight, I think I'd probably do the same thing, give the edge to the guy that won the league. But boy, it's not much. I think I think both players were very, very valuable to their teams. And if they didn't have them, they would have had rough years. And so really, I don't know if there was ever a race that was as close as this in a long time. And it had as much depth for Player of the Year as it did this year. And it shows up on some of the All-American teams that have come out where there's been a lot of Big Ten players. It's really been as good a year in a long time for really high quality players in the league. And so it makes that choice decision really difficult.
I'm going to throw up a comment here that we just received to the text line. And yes, you can text the studio line if you want to. Prefer you send in the chat here, but you're welcome to do that. From one of our listeners, he says, I really like the group of Big Ten men's basketball coaches right now. That's a good question for you, Gary. How quality, or that's not even really a good way to ask the question, but how high of a quality is the group of Big Ten coaches that we have right now? It seems like there's just a lot of, and there's some young guys with Micah Shrewsbury and Ben Johnson, but can you speak on the group that we have?
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. They both had their moments, had some good wins, and entered a tough situation in both cases of those programs with them being relatively down and in a tough league. Yeah, I think the coaching is really good. It's they've done well. They did well in the ACC tournament. I think the big thing will be how well we do in the. You're always evaluated on how well you do in the NCAA tournament. I mean, it's not fair. But that's the deal. We got to get some teams to get to the second weekend. We got to get some teams that Final Four. The Big Ten hasn't won a national championship in a long time. I think since 2000 when Michigan State won it. That's a long time. So the Big Ten needs to do some damage in the tournament to get as much recognition as it deserves. And
we did have somebody try to call us during our last call. So if you want to give us a call back, 515-635-1601, 515-635-1601. And a comment from Ben. He says, coming from a Chicago guy, Collins is loved by the administration and boosters cannot see him getting fired. I hope that's the case. I think he's a good coach.
Me too.
I think he's a good coach. And he obviously seems.
And they probably realize it's, the battle he's going through. It just didn't look very good today. It got me a little nervous because I care for the kid. I think he's a terrific guy and a good coach. And so I hope he's right on that.
And Lemansky brings up a good point. Tim Miles getting fired at Nebraska. And I thought Tim Miles did decent, but it's a tough league to win in, Gary. And I think Fran a bit underappreciated. And I like the fact, I don't know if you heard this, but you heard Keegan Murray after the game talking to the Big Ten Network, verbally bringing up Iowa's struggles as a program in the Big Ten tournament. They're not shying away from that. And I'm fine with that, Gary. If you're a coach, if you're Fran specifically, maybe Fran's not bringing that up privately with the kids. But to me, that's a sign of humility from Fran's standpoint because this is his program and they have struggled in the Big Ten tournament. But if he's willing to use that to give his guys motivation, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, I don't either. I doubt it came up. But it could have. I mean, you just never know. I think the tournament's hard to win. It's hard to advance. It's a battle. So I can understand that definitely. And social media, they all know. They know the records and they see all that kind of stuff. And hey, if it motivates them, terrific. Hopefully, after this weekend's over, that discussion will be a moot point.
Boy, wouldn't that be great? Let's take our next call here. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
This is Pat from Minnesota.
Hey, Pat.
Hi, Pat.
I just wanted to ask. I wanted to ask Coach Close. Today it reminded me of watching a Dr. Tom and Gary Close team. I mean, the offensive splurge there, and I just wanted to know which Iowa team maybe would come the closest that Gary was involved with at Iowa.
Well, that's a real good question. The first few years, we had some real firepower. We had some games where we put up some serious points, and it was a really good pressure defensive tean.
And that's what I'm thinking. Maybe 85 was that, or 86?
Yeah, 86, 87. So we got a lot of offense out of our defense with turnovers, and we got the pace up pretty high. And I'd say any one of those those three teams. We had BJ, Roy, and Eddie for their final 3 years, and we added some good players to the mix, and Ray Thompson and some others that helped us along. So it was a nice little run. Matt Bullard and so I'd probably say one of those teams, maybe the 86-87 team, which was really talented. Kevin Gamble probably would be on par, but I give Fran a lot of credit. That is really a fun offensive team to watch. They get the ball down the court with great speed and precision. They don't turn it over. They're very unselfish. They got a pretty good idea of what good shots are. They very rarely take bad shots. It happens every once in a while, but not a lot. And even today when they miss shots, they just went and got the ball and put it back in, pounded them on the glass. So it's a fun team to watch. That's why I give him a chance to be dangerous in both these tournaments.
Well, even Sanford's been, I've always liked his jump shot, and the way he's really come on lately has been fabulous too, the last few games. But
yeah, you admire his, he's got no fear. He's got a lot of confidence, and you get on a stage like that, sometimes you might get a little hesitant, and boy, he's not. I think he's got a chance to be really good. And Tony is coming on. I mean, Tony is looking much more confident. And that'll bode well for the future as Bohannon leaves, and they're going to need some points at that position. And those two guys are showing promise.
One last thing I wanted to comment on is I've been impressed with Connor McCaffrey when he's in a press conference, and so anyway, I watched his teed up with Connor and Patrick on YouTube, and it's fabulous because it really brings out what's going on behind the scenes. And you get to know the other players, what they do in their off time, and what they do in practice, and it's fabulous. And it kind of brings back memories. I have only coached junior high, but kind of brings back memories of how you get to know the kids. And of course, Gary, you can really relate to that, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm just recommending that to everybody. And then the last show I watched, they had their mother on, Margaret, and their sister on, and I thought, what an impressive family. Watching that, the relationships they have, but I just wanted to throw that out to the listeners.
Yeah, that's good. That's a really good point. He gets it. Connor gets it. I mean, he's been down the pike a few times, and very smart, tough player, and now he's playing the best he's played all year offensively. And this is really a special time of year, and even for families. I know when we or in both the Big Ten and the NCAA tournament, families got to go along. During the year they don't, but usually most schools, I'm guessing, it's certainly Iowa, Wisconsin did it. The whole crew goes, so your whole family's there. And obviously, if you win, you get to stay. If you lose, you go home. So when you win, it's pretty neat, and so it's a whole family thing, and you got to enjoy it because it doesn't last forever. And we talked about that earlier. You got to enjoy the moment because it could end tomorrow or end in a couple of years, whatever it is. It's not ever ending. So it's nice to be able to see them enjoy that because it's, I know, taking my family to the NCAA tournament, that we got some memories we'll never forget, pictures, and it's a really cool time.
Now, I'll just say this, Pat, to add to the comment about the Teed Up podcast with Gary with Connor and Patrick. I haven't been able to watch every episode, but what I like about that whole setup is, they're making some money. I don't know how much money they're making, but I think, my opinion, that's the good thing about NIL. I don't like NIL being used and it's being used by, the big donors and people who are actually basically recruiting players with NIL money. I don't believe that's not the purpose of NIL. It shouldn't have ever been the purpose of NIL. What's great about it is Connor and Patrick being able to make some dollars doing that. So I agree. Anybody who's interested in a good show, absolutely listen to Teed Up on. I think it's Gazette.
Check it out.
It sponsors that, Pat.
It's Hames. I think it's Hames Homes.
Oh, okay. They're sponsored. I got you. Yeah, I think the Gazette is. I think the Gazette is the newspaper that.
And they do that after every game.
No, I think it's maybe a week.
I don't think it's necessary. Maybe you know about that, Corey. I've only seen them at the last 4 or 5, but because I wasn't aware of it. But so I don't think it's game related. I think it's just kind of they started this months ago, I guess.
Yeah,
very nice.
But they've had Luca on with his girlfriend. They've had Ash. That was funny. Luca was funny. You just get to know the personalities, and I felt like I've learned some more basketball too, just listening to them talk about some of the things that go on the court, and all the practices, how hard the practices are and stuff. And so you learn a lot, and you have to really know the players well and appreciate them more.
Absolutely.
Well, you can even, in watching that in commenting, you can even watch on the bench. You watch the reaction to the bench when good plays are made, and they're all into it. My son's a part of the program, and he thinks the world of the guys that are in it. They're fun to be around, and that's not a guarantee, man. That doesn't happen all the time. So when you have it, you better enjoy it, because it helps. There's no question. It makes you want to root for them even harder, and hopefully this will continue, because this is the time when you want to get hot.
That's all I've got. I just wanted to put out those two things, and then thank you guys for doing this throughout the year. It's been fantastic.
Appreciate you calling, Pat.
Thank you.
And, all good points. And I see this comment from Steve. He says, rooting for you guys because you gave us loot. Iowa versus Arizona in the national championship. How's that for a national championship, Gary?
Oh, that would be unbelievable, wouldn't it? Yeah, Arizona's good. I've only seen them a couple times, but man, they're impressive. But
the good news is, I think with this win, it's safe to say Iowa will not be playing Arizona in the second round.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. No, I don't.
Because Arizona's, I don't think even if they're a 2, I don't think Iowa's I think Iowa with this win, and again, I'm basing some of this on, I'm not quoting Tim Kruger of Stadium, never said this, but we did a show with Tim Kruger as a bracketologist for Stadium, Gary, and he, just from his insight, I have a feeling that this win for Iowa ensures, especially the dominance that they displayed in this game. Even if they were to lose to Rutgers, I don't think they're a 7. I think they're safely a 6, which in my opinion is a big thing to avoid playing a 1 or a 2 in that second round.
Yeah. Iowa fans may not know that Lute Olson had a role in getting Tom Davis to Iowa, and pretty much a pretty significant role. And then we had some battles when he was at Arizona. We were at Stanford, and when the job opened up, he helped. And as they say, the rest is history.
Can you explain what the role was more specifically, or?
Well, I think Lute got a hold of Tom, and I'm not so sure that Bump maybe didn't get a hold of Lute, because I think Elliott had some interest in Tom, and Lute thought it would be a great fit, that Tom would really fit in well, having coached there, and Tom was close to taking another job, and then Iowa made a push, and that's where he ended up. And I think Lute sold Iowa to Tom, and I think that helped, along with Bump Elliott. I think he really, really felt comfortable with Bump Elliott, who was a phenomenal AD, and as a head coach, you want an AD in your corner, and there was no better one than Bump.
I always get this record wrong. Thank you for clarifying this, Doug. Fran was 5-10 before coming into the Big Ten tournament this year. So you win 4 straight. That record goes to 9-10. Not so shabby. But again, Iowa has an opportunity just with a win tomorrow to win 2 games in the Big Ten tournament for the first time since 2006. And they want to win this thing. I get it, but certainly 1 game at a time, and they have an opportunity to do that tomorrow. All Thumb says that Iowa drops 9 threes tomorrow in a 77-65 victory. Rutgers let's remember that game, Gary, and I can pull up the box score, but if I recall, Iowa really struggled from 3 in that game. Now it would make sense because they scored 46, but 3-point defense obviously is something that I think it's safe to say Northwestern struggles with. But at the same time, Keegan I believe he's 7 of 7 over these last 2 games, Gary, because I think he was 4 of 4 the other night. He's 3 of 3 today. How well, this shooting display that they're carrying right now, assuming it can continue, how far can this level of shooting take them in the tournament?
Well, it's not, they're not going to shoot like that. That was just phenomenal. Hopefully they can get close to that. Although who knows, they're crazier things have happened, but I think as long as they're, shooting a solid percentage, that's going to help, because it's just going to open everything up around them. They're offensively, they are playing at a really high level right now, and they can score in a lot of different ways. It's not just the 3. And I think one of the reasons they're getting as good a looks they're getting is because they've got to be covered from the rim all the way out to the 3-point line. And so it makes them a tough guard.
And when you see Tony Perkins and Connor McCaffrey launching it without hesitation and it's going in, boy, that's just a bonus when you have, again, Bohannon and Chris and all those guys. Let's take our next call. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Lomansky, Corey.
Howdy, Lomansky. How are you?
Good. This is for you both, and I'm going to dive into what Gary mentioned about, the Big Ten historical record in the NCAA tourney in the recent years. And just for me looking at it, I would think any team, including Iowa, doesn't beat themselves. I'm talking assist to turnover ratio. They seem to beat every team in the turnover battle. And then I'm going to dive into style for you both. The Big Ten's kind of noted for the big guys and tough conference and maybe get hurt with the whistle in NCAA. But I would think that Fran's style is pretty modern. And I remember Frank Garza on a podcast talking about Luka when he was younger, trying to groom him. And of course, Frank Garza played high-end basketball in his day. And Frank said that the NBA has kind of gone away from the center position, away from Chamberlain, Olajuwon, and college is kind of doing the same thing. So he tried to teach Luka, the importance of shooting from the three, worked on his footwork, and admitted that Luka had some deficiencies. In fact, he related it to his own genetics, but he said he had to get Luka to learn how to be, for the long term, how to be a more modern person related to what basketball's evolved to. Both of you can expound on that. I'd be interested in what you both think.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that it's changing. And it was interesting when you mentioned that. I watched the game the other day. I just saw it on my TV. It was a 76ers Celtic game back in the Eastern Conference Finals, like in the early 80s when Dr. J was playing, and I was a big fan of his. And they beat the Celtics in a Game 7 game in Boston. And there were no three-point shots taken until the last couple of minutes when Boston was down big and they started parrying a bunch and got back in the game. I mean, you go back and look at some of those games and literally there's a three-point line, but nobody shoots them. And the same thing was the case in college. It just, now it's all about three-point shooting and from the one position all the way to the five. And no, I agree. It's here and probably here to stay. And I think Luka's dad was spot on in terms of, hey, if you're going to try to play at the next level, here's some of the things you got to develop, because that's the way the game's going at all levels. I mean, in college they don't shoot it like they do in the NBA, but there's still a lot of three shot in both by all positions, and so it's the sign of the times, no doubt.
Gary, does that philosophy of not beating yourself, is that right up the alley of Bo Ryan and your philosophy at Stanford yourself?
Yeah, there's no doubt. Especially when you don't have as much talent as the other team. You just can't give them extra possessions. You can't foul them because every possession is important. Shot selection is big. And so what you want to do is try to give yourself a chance so that with 3 minutes to go, you're in the game. And now it's a 3-minute game and it's a 6-8 possession game. You got a chance. Whereas, in a lot of cases, especially when teams have got different levels of talent, the game is over by then and there's no chance. Today was obviously a big example, but and so to do that, how do you do that? How do you give your team a chance against a team that's got more talent than you? Well, one of the ways is to take care of the ball and get possessions, because we would always say a lot of times, and you watch it when you watch games now, you watch a team turn the ball over. It happened today. You watch a team turn over. Inevitably, what happens is the other team scores at the other end, a 2 or 3. So it's literally anywhere from a 4 to a 6-point swing. The 2 or 3 that you don't get offensively, and the 2 or 3 they get. on you defensively. And if you have 3 or 4 of those in a game, your chances of winning are not going to be very good. And so, it's got to do with that. It's got to do with fouling. If you make bad fouls, then the team gets in the penalty sooner. Now, when you have a legit foul, they're shooting rather than taking the ball out, and they get the penalty sooner. And you're fouling teams in the act of shooting, and so all those things add up to where it could be a 3 or 4 point game. Instead, with turnovers and bad fouls and things like that, it's a 12 or 14 point game. You have no chance. So it's the way you gotta. It's one way to try to keep your team competitive when personnel wise you don't match up. Which our case at Stanford and even at Wisconsin was most of the time. We just did not have as much talent as Arizona or UCLA in that league. We didn't have as much talent in the Big Ten. We just, later we did, but for most of the, not that we still couldn't win, and we got the most out of our talent, but that's just the way it is.
I'll close with the following and let you get out the program. I got to make a comment about, it seems like the Iowa fan base is, in my opinion, way overly concerned with Fran's personality on the sidelines. If you really dive into some of these podcasts and in his history, he may look that way on the sidelines. He's definitely not that way off the court. And Krzyzewski was at West Point in the military, and it's kind of about discipline. And I think the Iowa fan base at times, if you don't think Lute Olson was a disciplinarian, he had some moments at Iowa that were pretty fiery, and we kind of forget about that. But I don't have any problem with Fran's demeanor on the sidelines, and I think now we have him, communicating with the player after we went through this Michigan thing with their head coach that I just can't stand with Howard. And I think that was a pretty good signal to his team how to think of the team first, maybe about individual. Might have just been a miscommunication from what I heard from Dolphin was there was a pass to Laceda and the instructions were yelled out in the court, and maybe just an innocent miss by a player. But I don't have any any problem with Fran's demeanor on the sidelines. And don't you think, Gary, that Laceda is used to, he's a Division I player. He's used to, it's not a democracy. And I think sometimes we think we've got our kid out there in 8th grade sitting in the stands, and I'll close with that and let you both comment.
Thanks, Lance. Yeah. Appreciate the call.
Yeah, I think you got to coach to your personality. You just can't be fake. Everybody's a little bit different and handles things in different ways, and the players will read it. I mean, players want you to be honest and straightforward, and when you're BSing them, whether it's in a soft voice or a loud voice, they'll know it, and they just want the straight scoop and an honest answer, and I think Fran does that in 100% fashion.
I've never heard a former player of his say anything bad about him, ever. So, yeah. I mean,
well, that's something in itself.
And I will say this: I think Fran has dealt with temper problems. He's had a problem at times reeling in the temper, and I mean, we all have had that problem at some point in our lives. And I think he's done a lot better in recent time. He's taken accountability, and I mean, I again, as far as it relates to the players, I think the players love him, and I'm a defender of Fran McCaffrey. There's no question.
Yeah, he's perfect. You're going to make mistakes. You just you admit it, apologize for it, and move on. We're all fallible. So no, I agree totally.
Ben says Kent McCausland versus Jay Bo. Who you got?
They're very similar. Kent was a terrific shooter. Kent didn't shoot as many as Jabo. He didn't need to. He had some other players around him. I think, in terms of how long his career's lasted and the numbers he's put up. There's probably edge, but in terms of pure shooting, Ken McCall's going to shoot with anybody. He could really shoot the ball. He just didn't put up the numbers that J-Bo has because he hasn't had the opportunity. But in terms of pure shooting, he could really knock it down.
All thumbs. What are the chances Keegan stays another year to play with his brother?
I think Hayden Fry said it, slim and none, and Slim just left.
Slim left town. You know who says
Slim
that?
left town, yeah. Okay.
I get that. Don Patterson says that all the time. I didn't realize
I
that.
think you got that from Hayden.
Right. Okay. Yep. I agree. I think I think Slim and none. I may not say Slim left town, but boy, he's heading that direction because I just right now Keegan hasn't slowed down. I mean, he doesn't slow down against really anybody. I mean, he has an off game here or there, but an off game for Keegan, is 19-8. I mean, that's an off game. So
yeah.
And he didn't play the majority of that second half, Gary. And I mean, look at his line here. He ended up with 26 points on 11 of 16 shooting. Again, he's 7 of 7 from 3 over these past 2 games and 8 rebounds. He had 30, maybe 35 and 15 if he stayed in there or better. Maybe
more. Yeah, no, he was terrific. That's okay. We're going to save some of those points and rebounds for tomorrow and down the road.
Let's hope so. Rose says, and she's right. I think she's onto something here. She said, I don't really think these tournaments do much for seeding. It's all about the money and for teams that need to get in the big dance. I'd say in the middle of that, Rose, I understand where you're coming from. I asked Tim Kruger that specific question. Do we read too much into conference tournaments as it relates to seeding in the NCAAs? And he said, absolutely, we do. But they are part of the schedule, Gary. And tomorrow would be a quality win. It's not a quad 1 win. Today was not a quad 1 win. But I have to think that winning against any Big Ten team on a neutral court by 35 or whatever it was, it does help you. And like I said, I think they're safely at a 6 right now. But again, we'll have to wait and see. Lucas here commenting, he says almost had more offensive rebounds than Northwestern had total rebounds. Let me throw up that stat here, Gary, because I didn't even notice this until we started talking about the rebounding battle. This is insane. I know Northwestern struggled on the glass, but 45-18 for an Iowa team that struggled here on the glass.
Yeah, but Iowa didn't miss any shots. I mean, they had very chance to get any defensive rebounds. The ball was going through the back. You don't get a rebound when you take it out of the basket and inbound it. That's not a rebound. Right. It's got to be a miss. So that put a big damper. And then Iowa did a good job on the defensive glass. Didn't give up many offensive rebounds. And that's how you see that's a pure reflection. That's how rebounding is reflected by your defense. If you don't stop anybody, it's hard to get rebounds and you're going to get crushed on the glass.
Absolutely. And a couple other comments before we finish up here. One being, let me find it here, get behind in the chat, and then I have a problem catching up. Well, we will come back. Actually, here it is. Steve says, no disrespect to you, Coach Close, but it's just that Arizona was a nobody until Lute. But he says, question exactly how important is point guard play in the tournament? It seems like whoever has the best point guards win. And that is true. That narrative is around. And no, also I'll preface what I'm about to say, Gary, by saying no offense to you, but I don't look at Wisconsin as having had tremendous. You mentioned Jim Jackson's son; he's a pretty darn good point guard. But I mean, I think it's safe to say he was a good Big Ten point guard. He didn't play in the NBA, I don't believe. So how important? I mean, you guys obviously had success in the postseason. How important is point guard play?
Well, I think guard play in general is important because they're the ones that are handling the ball the most, making the decision with the ball, their ability to knock down outside shots. I think one of the reasons Rutgers has improved as years go on is their guard play has just gone through the roof. I mean, those 3 guards are good. That's going to be an interesting matchup. So I think guard play is important. I think Iowa's guards have played well these last couple of weeks. Hopefully that'll continue, but they got a challenge with Rutgers. Those guards may be as good a collection of guards as there is in the league. And the one guard got Defensive Player of the Year. And the other guard seems like he's been there almost as long as J-Bo. So that's probably their strength is their guard core and Harper. And so that'll be an interesting matchup. And I was in Arizona when Lute came to Arizona from Iowa, and the commenters are right. Arizona was horrendous, and it was a complete turnaround to where he dominated the pack and won an NCAA tournament. He did a phenomenal job at Arizona, and deserves a lot of credit for it.
Ben says, Coach Close, how good was Sam? Is it Oki? Is that how you pronounce his last
Mm-hmm.
name? As Iowa beat UConn and ultimately make it to the Final Four, Sam Oki doesn't get hurt in 98, 99. And yes, I'm sorry, Iowa fans. I'm asking how to pronounce the last name because I was like 3 years old at the time. Go ahead, Gary.
Well, that was an interesting case. You know, we recruited Sam really hard out of high school, and he ended up going to Wisconsin and ended up leaving and came to Iowa for his last year, and struggled. It was a hard transition. In fact, to make a long story short, he had to sit out. He transferred at the semester break, so he had to sit out, and he was going to sit out the entire year. And then at the beginning of the year, that final year, our contract was, we knew we're not coming back. It wasn't going to be renewed. And Sam said, well, I'm not going to play for my third coach in 3 years. I'm taking off. I'm going to play the final semester. He only played a semester for the Hawkeyes. So, you know, you played the whole fall semester without him. Now you're going to play with him. Hard to get him, you know, in with everybody else and get the chemistry and the whole thing. And it was a struggle. But then he started to play really well. And then he gets hurt right before the NCAA tournament. Whether it would have been enough to beat UConn, I don't know. That was the UConn team that went on to win the national championship. We gave, you know, we talked about it in a previous cast. We gave him a hell of a game, almost beat him. Maybe Sam would have made the difference, but he was a really talented player that it's too bad he didn't get a full year at Iowa, because he was one of the better. He was a Big Ten freshman of the year and very talented. And with him, who knows? It certainly would have given us a better chance. He was a really good player.
Now I'm going to have to, my project tonight, Gary, is to find film of Sam Oki. So I appreciate that. Fred says, I can't remember, was Jordan starting at point guard the last time we played Rutgers? The answer to that question is no. That was prior to the change. So perhaps a difference there, a factor, and certainly Steve Michael, maybe some changes there with Garden at the, Bohannon at the point. Let's take our next call. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line? Coach Williams from Battle Creek, and I believe this is Kenyon Murray's high school coach. Am I right, Greg?
Oh, Coach. Is he there? Oh, that's too bad.
Hold on, Coach. Hold on, Coach. I don't think he can. Can you hear him, Gary?
I can't yet.
Can you hear me, Gary?
Oh yeah, I can hear you now. Speak up, buddy.
Okay, can you hear me?
There you go. How's it going?
There you go. Okay, but yeah, I saw you at. I had a player playing Ohio State, Trey McDonald, and you guys put it on them their senior night by about 30. And you're going to the Final Four and then the finals. And I hollered your name when you went in. You looked at me and then you were kind of confused. I don't know if you actually knew who it was when you came back out of the locker room, but you looked at me again. I think you kind of looked like, okay, I know who that guy.
I know, yeah.
But I just wanted to say what a great time to be a Hawkeye again, Gary. I went through those runs when obviously Kenyon and Monteiro were out there, and when the passing of Chris, and I was at both of those games at State when you came back, and obviously the game against the Final Four. Just what great games and great atmosphere, and to be able to do it again, man, I tell you, it's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying the run, and missed the game today. I plan on driving down tonight and being down there for the weekend.
What are you up to now?
I retired. Been retired about 6 years. Still running a youth program in the summer that I've run almost 40 years now. So I'm doing that and just enjoying retirement, enjoying my grandkids. And I remember playing football, won a national championship at Ferris State University Division II this year. And I got one graduating from high school playing for Kalamazoo Central. So just enjoying the kids and enjoying the Hawkeyes, enjoying following them. I've been down to Purdue and Ohio State. I was in Champaign on Sunday. I thought that shot was going down. I tell you, I had a line right on it. It looked great. Had a great release. that's all you can ask at the end of the game. You know, Gary,
Exactly.
had that opportunity, and I told Kenyon, I was sitting right next to him. I said they were missing those free throws. I said, man, hey, the opportunity is going to be there. Someone's going to hit a game winner. We're getting out of here. And I thought it was going to come to fruition, but that's the game, as you know, Gary. But you know, to get that shot up and have that opportunity to silence all those folks down there in Champaign didn't happen, but the opportunity was there.
Well, let me say this, Greg, and this is right from the heart. Kenyon Murray was one of the most fundamentally sound, hardworking, without question, the best defensive high school player I've ever coached. Most of the time you get high school players, they don't even know how to spell defense, much less play it. And I mean, when you got a program out of Greg's program, you knew you got somebody that's fundamentally sound, going to work hard, appreciates playing defense as well as he does offense, and just a quality kid. And I mean, it's just, that's the way he was. And that's why he played right from the very beginning. So
you know, Iowa was the right place for him because, as you know, we pressed after maids.
Yep.
And after misses. I mean, we went into basically our diamond.
We even tried that after watching your teams play in high school. We said, hey, that's something that we have not tried before, and we actually did when we got Kenyon. We tried to do it after misses on missed free throws, and we did do that for a while, and we got that right from watching you in high school.
I can remember one summer. I think you were there. You know, at camp, you used to have after camp, I'd go up and give Michael Walker and my son Dorian pizzas, and then I'd come back in. You guys were in front. You had your little concession in the back with your juice and things. So I slipped in the back. All the coaches were there. Coach Davis caught me coming in. He says, hey, Greg, we were just talking about the press, and I know you guys run your 75Z press. Hey, why don't you come up? And I told him back then, this was before I understand all the technology. So I said, Coach, no, hey, you're fine. I said, anybody who's interested in it, they can give me their address and stuff, and I'll send it to them. I got 17 requests.
Is that right?
And I sent them. I mailed 17 copies out to everybody. And through the years, I've ran into guys who've actually said it worked. But like you're getting back to Kenyon, Chuck had some great players. We had some great players at Battle Creek. They went on to real great things, different universities, and had great careers. But with Kenyon, Chuck always said he was the best because academically, I mean, basketball-wise, obviously character-wise, I mean, Kenyon was just a great kid. And obviously, he was Mr. Basketball, McDonald's All-American. You know, he did all those things, and obviously went to Iowa. Well, he had a teammate, David Hart, that played for us also, who went to Michigan State.
Yep.
And Judd came in to sign him, you know. So Judd tells Chuck, hello, Chuck. Hello, Fred. He gets to me and says, hey, Greg, I want to thank you for everything you did to get Kenyon to Iowa. You know, that's typical Judd. And then Michigan basically dubbed me, the University of Michigan dubbed me the Iowa guy, the Iowa coach. But I had players play at both those institutions also. So you know how it goes. You win some, you lose some. Kenyon just always loved Iowa. And it's amazing because I think I talked once before on the program that the thing about Kenyon, I think you asked the question, Gary, about who's better. Well, Kenyon started about 7th or 8th grade, and he just picked up everything so naturally. Mm-hmm. Well, those boys grew up in the household, and so what you're seeing in Chris and Keegan is no surprise to me because Kenyon, even when they were coming up, he'd come back to Battle Creek with them. He said, Coach, they're so much further ahead than I was at this point. Because, again, they grew up in a household where Kenyon was coaching Indian Hills. And I can remember when it was collars when I was taking players out to Indian Hills who were getting recruited, and Kenyon was recruiting. And so they've been around it. They've been around it that long. So I'm not surprised because I'd listen to them. I close my eyes and listen to them in the press conference. I think I'm listening to Kenyon.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah. Well, it's got to be fun for you after watching Kenyon develop and to see this. It's almost like watching it all over again.
Oh yeah, just like Michelle. I think Jeff Settles was on the show, and he said he ran into Michelle, and he said Michelle said asked how she was doing. She says, "I'm marinating in joy." So every time I talk to Kenyon and Michelle, I say I'm marinating in joy.
That's a great way to put it.
But it is a great time to be a Hawk, and glad I'm able to do this the second time. Again, it was great the first time. Enjoyed listening to Coach Davis when I was sitting behind the bench, and
one of the things he always would say, he would send the player in. We pressed also. And so I kind of took it when I got back to the high school. I tell somebody to go in for someone. I said, come on, go get him, keep them fresh, keep them fresh. he always wanted to make sure you were fresh. And I developed a lot of my philosophy when I became a head coach of making sure I kept guys fresh and not playing them and fatiguing them, because it's hard to come back once you get fatigued, as you know. So I learned a lot of that. Tom Davis just sitting behind you guys and taking in all those gems of wisdom from you guys. So,
and Coach
but it was great seeing you at Ohio State, Gary. I tell you, that's why I hollered, Coach Close.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, Greg. Hopefully we'll cross paths again soon. I would love to see you.
Coach Williams, can I ask you
a
question?
Okay, are you planning on NCAA tournament, or are you going to do any Big Ten?
Yeah, it kind of depends on where they go. That is definitely a possibility.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's not San Antonio, but if it's somewhere within probably a 6-hour radius, I'll definitely be there.
Exactly. And you may see me there. We'll have to hook up.
Sounds good. Good talking to you, man.
Thanks for calling in, Coach. Appreciate it.
Okay, go Hawks. Okay,
go Hawks. Appreciate it. And I'm glad we made that connection, because I know Coach Williams had called in before and hadn't been able to. So have you? Has he been to? Maybe I missed it. Has he been to Carver this year?
I don't know. I don't know if I'm not sure he has. I think it's been.
I was going to ask him that, but
no, I'm not sure. So, but what a good guy.
Great guy, and sounds like he did a lot for Kenyon, and maybe down the line for Keegan and Chris. And Ben asks, which staff on the Dr. Tom staff was the lead recruiter? Was it you, Gary, for Kenyon?
Well, no, actually, it was interesting. I saw Kenyon play. I believe it was in San Antonio, at an AU tournament. He was young. He was really young. It might have been before sophomore year, and when I got back, Rich Walker was on the staff. Now, Rich was from Michigan, knew all those guys. Said, Rich, I got a guy for you. You got to get all over this kid. He is the real deal. He's going to be a player. And Rich did a terrific job. We got in early. I think it's one of the reasons why we got a shot, is because we were in early and gave us a chance. And then I think on his visit he had a good time and connected. So because a lot of people were surprised we got him out of there with Michigan and Michigan State wanting him badly. So really neat he called. That was fun.
All right. Final couple comments and questions here. Circle Herc says, did Iowa have more threes than Northwestern in rebounds? The answer to that question is yes, I believe, right? Let me look back at the rebounding total. It was 19 threes for Iowa, 18 rebounds for Northwestern. Grant says, I think we need to talk about how important it is for Bohannon to hit that first three. It seems like every time he hits one early, he stays hot and does so. So does the rest of the team. It's interesting, and that's true. Mm-hmm. And Jermaine, thank you for pointing this out. Jermaine went back and watched my predictions for the Big Ten tournament. I am 4 for 4 on my predictions. I predicted Indiana, Penn State, Iowa, and whatever the other one that I missed.
You picked Northwestern. I thought you were going for Nebraska.
No,
I changed your mind at the last minute.
Well, Nebraska was kind of the hot commodity, and I just felt like Northwestern was going to kind of take it with a grain of salt and come to play. I also kind of thought more and more about maybe it didn't shine through today, but that loss in Iowa City, it just didn't make sense, because that's not how Northwestern, even when Northwestern has lost this year, they're typically competitive.
Yeah. And
I think people were dismissing them in that game against Nebraska. And I was impressed with the Wildcats yesterday. I said that at the beginning of the show. I was impressed. And I give Iowa credit. They went out and beat Northwestern today. And granted, I mean, Northwestern did not play well. I don't think you can play well and you lose by 36 points. But Iowa did everything it needed to do, and just a terrific performance. So,
yeah.
All right, guys. Well, let's wrap it up there. If I missed a comment, I apologize. To recap Iowa's stellar performance, 112 to 76, breaking the Big Ten tournament single game scoring record. Keegan Murray with 26 points on 11 of 16 shooting. And let me just look real quick here. Keegan had just played 21 minutes. So that's pretty darn good efficiency for while you're in there. And Patrick, I thought, played well coming back from an injury/illness. It was good to get him out early, give him some extra rest. And of course, Philip Rebracha, I thought, played really well. We had a comment about him that I missed earlier.
He did. He played well.
9 boards. And it's going to be a challenge if they go up against Kofi Coburn again. But man, this guy is underappreciated. He has fought and fought and fought all year, and it's not. I can't imagine how hard it is as an undersized guy playing out of position to be able to bang with guys like Coburn and Hunter Dickinson. And he's done it this year, and I think he's underappreciated. Jordan Bohannon with 17 points, 5 of 8 from 3. Peyton Sandfort coming on at the right time with 13, 3 of 5 from 3. And I didn't get a total for Tony Perkins. 6 points, 6 assists, 4 boards, 2 of 2 from 3 for Tony Perkins. Those are pretty darn efficient numbers, and he's just operating within this offense with such a high confidence. And I texted Tony's uncle the other day and just said, man, your nephew's playing out of his mind. And that's how he responded. Confidence. He's just playing with immense confidence right now. And, boy, it's almost like that move that I was critical of at the time, moving Bohannon to the point.
Oh, you tore it all up. You got it. Was unbelievable.
It's almost like a two-edged sword in Iowa's favor. It's helped him. It's helped Jordan. It seemed to have helped Jordan, and it's helped Tony Perkins. So I give Iowa and Fran McCaffrey a lot of credit. Rebounding again, 45-18. Iowa just dominating in that category, and 19 of 29 from 3, breaking the all-time single game Big Ten conference record. So what a performance by Iowa. So that means that Iowa will take on Rutgers tomorrow. We know the storylines. Iowa losing, I don't want to say because of the officials, because they did not play well offensively in that game. I give Rutgers a lot of credit, Gary. Just to kind of compare the stats that I just read off for the game today. When they played Rutgers last time out, Iowa shot 28% from the field, 22% from 3, made just 6 threes on the night, got out rebounded 49-38, turned the ball over just 10 times actually on the road. But just offensively, it was just everything was hard in that game, and people were questioning the Fran offense, and it's been a 180 since. So everything's kind of come full circle here, Gary, and I'm with you. I kind of feel the same way. I felt very confident heading into Iowa's game in Ann Arbor about a week ago because of how they lost at home. I just felt like Iowa perceived that loss to be one that got away. And I think they feel the same way about the Rutgers game. And I wouldn't be surprised if they almost feel like it was taken from them. I think they're going to come out tomorrow with a chip on their shoulders and play well. Now, they may not be a high scoring game. I think they're going to win tomorrow, Gary.
Me too.
Any final predictions or thoughts, Gary, on ease to the game? Or
I think it's going to be a really good game. Rutgers has played well. I really like their guards. I think that's going to be an interesting matchup. But I think this is Iowa's year to take this tournament, and then tomorrow's the next step.
All right, and I'm going to slip in one final question, Steve. I don't want to ignore you. What mid-major team do you not want to see in the tournament? I would have said Iona, but they lost, so they're not going to the tourney.
Did they get beat today?
They got upset in the whatever that is, the MEAC or whatever conference that is. So I would not want to see, because I know Mike DeCourcy was predicting an Iowa-Iona first-round matchup. That will not happen now. So is there a mid-major besides maybe Murray State that stands out to you, Gary?
Yeah, that's a good question. I tell you, a team that's played well is Princeton. Now they still got to win their tournament, which I think is this weekend. But they've got a really veteran team, and Mitch does a really good job. I really haven't seen a whole lot of mid majors. I'll have to take a look at that and see who might come out of that. But I have watched them play a little because I've gone back to see them a few times, and he's got a team that can really shoot the three, but they could get knocked out this weekend in their own tournament.
I'll give you my sleeper and then a real dark horse. I'd say Chattanooga. And again, I go back to my conversation with Tim Kruger. He was very high on John Chattanooga, and they made a buzzer beater, just miraculous 30-footer to beat Furman the other night. It's just incredible, and kind of signaling March is here. But Chattanooga's a dangerous team. And then I'll throw you one, Longwood, team that Iowa played the very first game of the season. They won their conference outright. They won their conference tournament. It's a good team right now, and playing good basketball. Now, if you're Iowa, that would be so weird if they got matched up with. They probably won't, because I'm guessing Longwood would be a 15 or something like that. But I'll say that's my sleeper. So again, folks, Iowa, Rutgers tomorrow, and Gary will be on tomorrow, right? You're not going, or you're not doing emergency flight out to Indianapolis to go to the game, are you?
No, it's tempting. I'll tell you that, it's tempting, but no, I'll be right here.
All right, folks. For Coach Gary Close, I'm Corey Bratta. We will have this podcast up on our podcast platforms from the Hawkeye of the Storm in a few hours, and we will talk to you tomorrow afternoon.